not find it to be, but its impact you as well. So we're talking about the rule of exposure, the law of cognition. The title of our study is On Your Thoughts. We were talking about things that we're exposed to, trying to take those things captive. I left off referencing an allegory that was written by John Bunyan. John Bunyan wrote The Pilgrim's Progress way back in the 1600s. But another piece of literature that he wrote was entitled The Holy War. And in it, it's an allegory, and it's talking about our human bodies. And the city that's being attacked is called man's soul. And if you think about what that represents, that's going to represent our soul, right? And he talks about the ways that this city is attacked, this fortified structure is attacked. There's two gates. One of them is the eye gate, one of them is the ear gate. The eye gate is the most vulnerable, but the one that they attack first is the ear gate. So if we think about that relating to us, what we were looking at as we got finished last week, we were in Proverbs chapter 4. So if you'll turn back to Proverbs chapter 4. We're in verses 20 through 27. Well, I'm using personally the English Standard Version, but I have several different translations in my notes. The verse that we were keying on is what Solomon told us to keep your heart with all vigilance, for from it flows the springs of life. But before Solomon says that, in verse 20, he says these words, "My son, be attentive to my words, incline your ear to my sayings. Let them not escape from your sight. Keep them within your heart, for they are life to those who find them and healing to all of their flesh." As we're finding out, and as we'll continue to find out, if our thoughts influence us and cause us to do what we do, it leads to our behavior. Wouldn't you think that it's really important to understand where those thoughts are coming from? One of the things that I think we lose sight of is we underestimate the impact that what we hear influences us. One version of this says, "My child, pay attention to what I say. Listen carefully to my words. Don't lose sight of them. Let them penetrate deep into your heart, for they bring life to those who find him and healing to the whole body." In the book of Proverbs, we'll find words like hear and listen and heed. We'll find those more than 30 times. Why do you think that is? What? It's probably pretty important, right? Probably pretty important. Let's say you have an upcoming surgery. How many of us get anxious before surgeries? Wow, you guys are strong. I get anxious before surgeries. I get anxious before my surgeries, and I get anxious before my family's surgeries, right? Your doctor can prescribe a sedative or have a musical therapist put together a relaxing playlist. Which one would you choose? Just think about it. After surgery, post-surgery, you're in extreme pain. Your doctor can give you a good dose of morphine, or you can listen to music and take a smaller dosage of morphine. Which do you think is going to be better for you? Just think about it, okay? Research has shown that the music that we listen to can promote health, or it could lead to illness. The music that we listen to can cause or alleviate depression. The music that we listen to can influence spending and productivity. It can also alter our visual perception of the world. Other research suggests that music can increase aggressive thoughts, and it can encourage crime. It turns out, according to research, that prior to surgery, listening to a relaxing playlist created by a licensed musical therapist leads to significantly, that's a key word to me, significantly lower anxiety levels than taking benzodiazepine sedatives. Think about that. And the reason I guess that kind of hits home with me. I got 3 daughters that when they have to go get shots, it's unbelievable. It's almost like Heather will not go with them. She says, you have to go with them. Because there are times, and Chloe has been getting blood drawn a lot lately because of the illness that she had recently. I have to hold her with all of my strength because she is so scared. She is so petrified of needles. Caroline's the same way. Caroline went with Heather to the doctor one time, and she was in the room as Heather's getting examined, and the doctor says, I can give you a steroid shot and a Rocephin shot. And Heather said, yeah, let's do it. Caroline passed out when Heather was getting the shot because she's so frightened of it. When Mary Madison was younger and I had to take her to the doctor to get her back checked out, they had to do an MRI and they had to put that dye in her. She passed out on the couch and we had to wake her up. When we were leaving, I'm telling you, she was whiter than my shirt. We're walking and I'm walking. I said, honey, are you okay? She says, why? You have no color in you. It's incredible, right? But research, studies have shown that listening to soothing music is better. It's more relaxing than even taking these sedatives. After surgery, post-surgery patients who listened to music were shown to need 20% less morphine than those who didn't. What do you think that says about what we listen to? What comes in our minds through our ears? It's powerful, right? It's powerful. Pay attention to what you listen to. Not just the music, but also podcast, news feeds, maybe sometimes the friends that we hang around with. There's sometimes a tendency to believe, well, the music that I'm listening to, I'm not singing it. The news that I'm seeing, I'm not the one giving that news. The comedians that I listen to, I'm not the ones telling the jokes. And in a sense, yeah, that's right, you're not. You're not doing anything, but something's being done to you. So we got to be careful about what we let into our minds through our ears, right?
Hey, Jason.
Yes.
I started listening, it sounds kind of crazy. I started listening to classical music because I leave work every day and I just feel super overwhelmed and stressed. Some moms, I'm not a mom, I'm a dog mom, but some people just got it. Like they can go from this to this to this and they can pack their kids' lunches and write them a nice little note and do it all. I'm not one of them. So I'm going back to school, so I go home and I'm just like super stressed and I listen to classical music on the way home and it really helps.
It's relaxing, stress relief.
I'm like, I go from all these things going on in my brain to just calmness.
Yeah,
So it really does work.
makes a difference. Makes a difference. The other gate that he talks about is the eye gate. Right after telling us to guard our hearts, Solomon writes these words. Let your eyes, this is verse 25, let your eyes look directly forward and your gaze be straight before you. Ponder the path of your feet, and all of your ways will be sure. Did you know that we as Americans spend, depending on which statistics you look at, between 6.5 and 7 hours a day on screens, whether it be our computer, our phones, our televisions? Think about that. Think about the things that we're viewing. Think about the things that come into our minds through our eyes, right? We're not doing a very good job at guarding our hearts and our minds. Recent research shows that excessive screen usage has detrimental effects on social and emotional growth, including a rise in the likelihood of obesity, sleep disorders, and mental health conditions, including depression and anxiety. as bad as as much as we probably don't want to admit it, what we watch has a deep impact on the thoughts that come into our minds. And we're letting those things in. If we're talking about owning our thoughts, taking our thoughts captive to the obedience of Christ, letting, and we'll get to it in just a minute, the passage that we looked at in 2 Corinthians, I firmly believe that we need to commit that to memory. And we'll get to it in just a minute. But I want us to really understand the things that we hear and the things that we see have a profound impact on our thoughts. And that in turn shapes our behavior. And what does Solomon tell us to go all Fort Knox on? Guarding our hearts, right? Guarding our minds. One of the ways we can do that is pay attention to what we see, pay attention to what we listen to. So I went to the doctor a couple weeks ago. It's been a long time since I've been to the doctor, not because of this, I don't even know what this is, but just my regular checkup. It's been like 3 years since I've been. But imagine going to the doctor, and this didn't happen to me, but you go to the doctor and you step up on the scale, because that's the first thing they do, right? And you notice you're 20 pounds heavier than you were last time. Does the doctor say, man, what'd you eat that caused that? How'd that happen? Most likely, you're not going to say, well, doc, I was fine until Thanksgiving, but we had that big Thanksgiving meal and 20 pounds. There it is. Or last week, we went to the buffet down the road, and I was fine, but there it was, 20 pounds. That's not what happens, is it? But if you look back over the course of however long it's been since you've been to, like me, 3 years, but if you look back over time and you see, well, over the holidays I did indulge in a lot of the delicacies. I do enjoy 3 or 4 Oreos at night on the couch before I go to bed, or that bowl of ice cream. If I look at the cumulative effect of my diet, I'll probably notice where those pounds came from, right? If we look at the cumulative effect of what we hear and what we see, maybe we'll see why the output is the way that it is. Maybe we'll see why we can't control our thoughts. We can't control our minds. Maybe we'll see where those seeds are being planted and what's watering and what's cultivating those seeds, right? Ears that hear and eyes that see, Solomon says, the Lord has made them both. God made them both for us to worship Him, right? My child, pay attention to what I say. Listen carefully to my words. Don't lose sight of them. Let them penetrate deep into your heart, for they bring life to those who find them and healing to the whole body. Guard your heart above all else, for it determines the course of your life. Avoid all perverse talk. Stay away from corrupt speech. Look straight ahead and fix your eyes on what lies before you. Mark out a straight path for your feet. Stay on the safe path. Don't get sidetracked. Keep your feet from following evil. Over the course of this next week, I want you to think about how carefully are you guarding what you listen to? How carefully are you guarding what you look at? How carefully are you guarding what you say to others, like Solomon has warned us in this passage? So how do we stay on that path of purity? How can we make that adjustment? Psalm 119 has a really good answer for us. Psalm 119, beginning in verse 9. How can a young man keep his way pure? By guarding it, there's that word that we're talking about, by guarding it according to your word. With my whole heart I seek you. Let me not wander from your commandments. I have stored up your word in my heart that I might not sin against you. Blessed are you, O Lord. Teach me your statutes. With my lips I declare all the rules of your mouth. In the way of your testimonies I delight as much as in all riches. I will meditate on your precepts and fix my eyes on your ways. I will delight in your statutes. I will not forget your word. So if we're going to demolish those strongholds that we talked about last week, what do we need more exposure to? What?
His word.
God's word, right? That seems simple, though, doesn't it? Is it simple? Yes and no. Yes and no, right?
It's a habit, and if you have not created a habit by now, it is tough to start.
Right.
And that's why, like what we're talking about, that's hard to do now. Because there's a song for children. It's talking about a child's feet, his hands, his ears, his mouth, his eyes. You know, watch out, little child, where you go, and it's those are these hands, watch out where you hear, what you see, what you say. That's where we got to start teaching our children. That's where the habits have to start, right there. Because once they get up to teenagers, 20 years old, it is hard to start a new habit, especially one that they have, done all their life up to that time. It's hard to change that. It is hard for an adult to change. Very hard.
Correct. But what does it have to go back to if we want those things to be fixed? Obedience to God. How? Actions. By being intentional about it, right? Again, we've heard that a lot. If I want to change my behavior, where's it going to start? With my thoughts, in my heart. And I've got to be intentional about guarding my heart, my mind, right? Yes, sir.
And I said it last week, but complacency is a really big issue, I think. But there's a song, it's an old song by Rich Mullins, and one of the verses says, "The things of this earth compete for the allegiance that I owe only for God." And we have to be aware that the world is desperately trying to pull us away. So we have to see everything
Right.
as either good or bad. That's all there is, good or bad.
And we got to take those thoughts captive, right?
Every one of them. 1,000 a day.
That's right. So I've got some questions that I was going to get to last week, but we're going to skip those for now. Maybe we'll get to them at the end. But I want to talk about some of the things that cause us to have these thoughts. What are some triggers? What are some keys? What are the patterns that maybe we fall into? So the first one that I want to look at that I think is a big one, and I'll be honest, I don't know, maybe not every single one of these thoughts that these ideas that I'm going to present plague me, but almost every single one of them do. And I'm guessing if I have problems with them and struggle with them, at least one of you in here has to have those problems too. So let's jump in. The pattern of insecurity. Wall Street Journal article shared a study of 5,000 adults over a 2-year period, and it found that the more hours, again, part of this, I guess a lot of this here in the next couple of weeks is going to be dealing with like screens and social media and things like that, because why do you think that's going to be maybe a hot button topic over these next couple of weeks? Why is that going to be so important?
We're all so involved.
We are so involved. How many of us have something like this? And it is very addicting. It is very addicting. And if we're not careful, if we're not guarding our hearts, right, that can be a problem. 5,000 adults over a 2-year period found that the more hours logged on social media, the more the sense of well-being and happiness declined. In that same study, they looked at several thousand teens, and they discovered the use of social media apps like Instagram and Snapchat. Some of you guys know what that is, probably some of you don't. But that's how That's how our teenagers, that's how my kids communicate. That's how they get their stuff, their information. The use of social media apps like Instagram and Snapchat directly correlated to feelings of isolation, anxiety, depression, and inadequacy. Because of these things that we're taking into our minds. Turns out that social media is no more than a buffet of thoughts that feeds our insecurities. And because we feed our insecurities, we've become a very anxious society. You guys agree or disagree with those studies? Hopefully you agree with them, because I see it in my personal life. So here's how this pattern of insecurity typically goes. One, we start caring about what other people think. Then we start comparing ourselves to other people. And that leads to these negative thoughts and this negative self-talk, and our self-worth goes down. And all of this because we have feelings, we have thoughts of insecurity. How many of you guys care what other people think about you? I think everybody does, to a certain extent. That's exactly right. Sir? Absolutely. And if we care excessively about what others think, it's going to influence the things that we do, right? So there's a story of this preacher who he took a vacation, but it was kind of unplanned, and it didn't really happen. It happened suddenly, and his lack of communication about it, like he wasn't real detailed about what was going on, so naturally rumors started to fly. Is he looking for another job? Did he say something to somebody and he got fired? You know, what's happened to him? In his own words, he said some rumors were just flying around. Some were hurtful, some were kind of funny. One of the things he said that was very funny was somebody said that I was taking that vacation because I was having cosmetic surgery, and he was kind of thinking, well, what in their mind did they think that I needed to change about myself? But he said there was a lot of things that started coming out about that, and he started having some anxiety about it. So he confided in one of his mentors. And as he's relaying the story and sharing about his frustrations and the hurts that this has caused, it came out, he says, I just don't want people to think something bad or something that, is going through their minds. I don't want them to think that I'm a moral failure, like I've done something, inherently or sinfully bad. I don't want people to think I'm a moral failure. He was shocked when his friend said, but you are a moral failure. He said, I know that. I mean, I know we're all sinners. I know. He said, no, you're misunderstanding it. You are a moral failure. And you worrying about what degree of a moral failure you are to somebody else kind of makes you misunderstand what the gospel's all about. Think about that. Think about that in my life. If I'm worrying about what kind of failure I am to you guys, and I'm trying to live up to what you guys think, is that what we need to be doing? Who should we be worried about? Right. If I compare myself to you, I might be a lot better than you. If I compare myself to you, I'm not quite as good as you. We can't compare ourselves to others, right? So if I'm jumping ahead to comparing myself. If I'm caring what people think, that's going to impact the thoughts that I have, right? And it impact the thoughts that he had. We're all moral failures. If we weren't, then Jesus died for no reason, right? Jesus died for no reason. Proverbs chapter 29, verse 25 says this: the fear of man lays a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is safe. One version puts it like this: it is dangerous to be concerned with what others think of you. It is dangerous to be concerned with what others think of you. But if you trust the Lord, you are safe. Is it possible that our insecurities can come about because we care what people think about us rather than trusting in what God thinks about us? Can, right?
Jason, that's, you can twist that. And what other people see in us is important. We all represent something. Every one of us will leave and represent the church.
All right.
So we should be concerned what people see in us. Everybody in here, Evan up there, he represents his family. Just two of them right now, but he has an extended family. He works for Trinova. He represents Trinova. Seth may be off at college, but he still represents your family. He's got a nice little haircut this morning.
Doesn't he, though? He was kind of nervous about
We all represent. We all, it makes a difference what people see in us.
Absolutely. Yes.
I can't agree more with Mike, because when you were talking about when we care about what other people think about us, I see it very much like Mike does. You know, I don't care what people in the world think about me
Right.
as for, but it does affect my thoughts. Okay, how am I going, like my family, okay? They're not in the Church of Christ. So it's important, I care about what they see in me. I want to represent the Lord. I want to represent His people. So there's a negative and there's a positive. I think,
Right.
to be careful.
Right, that's right. And kind of, I guess, what I want to emphasize is we're not living to please people. Do we care what people think about us in regards to our spirituality and our Christianity? Absolutely. But we're not living to please those people. And that's what we have to focus on. We're living, like Paul says in 1 Thessalonians, we're living for Jesus. And that means I cease from trying to please people. What's the byproduct of living for Jesus? Pleasing people, because we're going to be doing the types of things that Jesus did, right? We're going to be serving. We're going to be kind. We're going to be generous. Those things will please people, but we're not trying to please those people. Does that make sense? Yes, sir.
We have to be careful about putting people through an extent too. I had a young lady that I was, giving a ride, morning. And I was talking about Jesus. He said, I love Jesus. He said, let me ask you about my son. My son is 32 last quarters. And I just think God loves, so I think that's all right. And she said, what do you think? I said, well, I think we're supposed to love this son. I said, but we also got to love him in truth. And I said, if your son's going to come down, you can't beat the Jesus. I said, it's in the scriptures, read Revelation 21:8. I said, read the other scriptures. She said, well, that's what you're saying. I said, well, man, that's what God said. And I said, and I love your son and I love you. But you can't love sin. I said, that's just the truth. I said, now, you can have bad feelings towards me, got that, I understand. I said, but your son's got to make a choice. We all have to make choices. But you asked me, and in love, I'm telling you, I love your son. And I said, don't you want your son to be with Jesus? He said, yes. I said, we'll tell him to be Sunday. That means he's in your life. And when she left, I don't mean to say she's critical of me, but I had her thinking. You never shy away from the truth. Jesus said the truth will set you free.
That's right. So,
And if we don't love people in love and truth, we just say we
I would say we're shying away from doing what we're supposed to do. So yeah, in senses like that, we can't let someone's thoughts about us, if we feel like it's going to be negative, keep us from sharing the truth of the gospel. So we can't let what others think about me. I can't care about what others think about me then, because I'm trying to show them the truth in love. Does that make sense? Any other thoughts or comments regarding caring what others think? Because when we care what others think, naturally we're going to start comparing ourselves, right? And sometimes we can start comparing ourselves unfavorably. I can look at you and say, never going to be as good as you. I can look at you and say, well, I'm a whole lot better than you, right? What does God tell us about comparing ourselves with other people?
He's the standard.
He is the standard, right? Paul says in 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 12, not that we dare to classify or compare ourselves with some of those who are commending ourselves, but when they measure themselves by one another and compare themselves with one another, they are without understanding. The NLT says it like this: don't worry, we wouldn't dare say that we are as wonderful as these other men who tell you how important they are, but they are only comparing themselves with each other, using themselves as a standard of measurement. How ignorant. Why is it bad that we compare our lives with other people's lives? What's the danger in that? Yes, sir.
You know, one thing I've always tried to do with myself, and it's not an easy thing to do, but look at yourself. If you want to judge yourself, I've said this before in public, look at yourself and say, hey, if everybody in this church was doing a little bit of work, a lot of work that I'm doing, where would the church be today? Would we be better off? Would we be worse off? If everybody was doing what I was doing, that's a good judge of yourself, where you stand.
Yeah.
Making
And along those lines, Grady talked about some of those things. They say, you deserve. How do those things come about? How do those thoughts enter our minds? Comes about from, do what?
When you watch an advertisement, it's all about you deserve, or,
And we compare ourselves to those people, right? We compare ourselves. One of the dangers of this is because the things that we see, especially if we're talking about social media posts, and how many of you guys post things on social media that you don't want anybody to see? Anybody in here do that? I'm going to post on social media about the fight that I had with my kids yesterday. You know what? We just had the biggest fight. Listen to how dumb that. Nobody puts that on social media, do they?
I think we do.
Okay. If they're careful, they don't put things like that. They don't put things on social media that they don't want people to see. So I'm going to put things on social media that shows the good things about me, the things that I want people to see. We don't air, some people do. We don't like to air our dirty laundry for the world to see because we don't want people to see how sinful we are, how inept we are. I want people to think that I'm the greatest thing in the world. I've got the greatest kids. I've got the fanciest car. I take the best vacations. We see the best of people. And if we compare ourselves to the best version of people, how's it going to make us feel a lot of times? Maybe inadequate. Maybe.
If you're judging yourself by other people, you've got a yardstick that's constantly changing and moving.
Absolutely.
It never stays the same. If you compare yourself to Jesus, he's the same yesterday, today, and tomorrow. You need to have
But if we're all honest with ourselves, if every one of us are honest with ourselves, we've all been guilty of this. We've been guilty of comparing ourselves to other people unfavorably and not using, 100% of the time, not using Jesus as our standard. Right?
I'm not a good encouraging people in the church that other people.
Yes. Yes.
Good job.
Absolutely. We care what other people think. We constantly, or not constantly, but we compare ourselves to others unfavorably. All of a sudden, that starts breeding these negative thoughts in our head, this negative self-talk. I'm not good enough. I'm not smart enough. I'll never be as pretty as that girl. I'll never be as good a parent as these parents. And those things start infiltrating us. It starts to create those neural pathways that now, all of a sudden, when I see something, it's a lot easier for me to think that negative thought. What does 2 Corinthians chapter 10, verses 3 through 5 talk about? And again, I'm personally memorizing this verse, and I'm trying to make it a part of my life. For though we walk in the flesh, we are not waging war according to the flesh. For the weapons of warfare are not of the flesh, but have divine power to destroy strongholds. We destroy arguments and every lofty opinion raised against the knowledge of God and take every thought captive to obey Christ. It is not going to be just me walking up to, there's an old Saturday Night Live skit, Daily Affirmations with Stuart Smalley. And if you remember that, it starts off the little skit, he's looking at himself in the mirror and he's smiling and he says, I'm good enough, I'm smart enough, and doggone it, people like me. That's not how we are going to overcome these strongholds. Because we can do that all we want. And while that is good, while we do need to have positive self-talk, that's not going to be what ultimately destroys those strongholds. What's it going to be? It's going to be God's power, right? It's going to be, like we've talked about, changing what we compare ourselves. I matter to the one who matters the most. And if we can think about that, everything else should or will eventually take care of itself. Because I'm not going to care what other people think in the negative way. Yes, I want people to think of me as a Christian, and I want them to see the actions that come along with that. But I'm not going to care about what the world thinks. I'm not going to compare myself unfavorably to those people. I'm going to hopefully eliminate this negative self-talk by understanding that I matter to the one who matters the most. And I know we're almost out of time, but I want just one example. And if we think about Moses in Exodus chapter 3, God goes to Moses, and what does he tell him? I want you to go to Pharaoh, the most powerful man in the world, and demand that he release my people. Can you imagine how Moses is feeling at that moment? Put yourself in that situation. And God comes to you and says, Jason, I want you to go to the President of the United States, the most powerful man in the world, and demand, I don't know, something outrageous. Demand that he eliminates all federal taxes. I want you, imagine how you would feel. Would you feel a little insecure? Would you feel a little anxious? I would say, yeah, that's not really going to happen. Not happening, God. And that's how Moses felt, right? And Moses says, who am I that I should go to Pharaoh and bring the Israelites out of Egypt? You know what God didn't say? God didn't say, Moses, you're good enough, you're smart enough, and doggone it, people like you. What does God say? I will be with you. Moses said, you know what, I really can't, I'm not a good speaker, I can't talk, I get nervous when I go up in front of people, especially powerful people like Pharaoh or powerful people like the President of the United States. God didn't say, oh, Moses, come on, just keep your head up. Think positive thoughts. You know what God said? I made your tongue. What is God doing for Moses? He's directing his thoughts off of himself and pointing them to him, right? How are we going to defeat these insecurities that we have? Focus on the one that matters the most. With the divine power, 2 Corinthians 10, the divine power can help us destroy the stronghold of insecurity. I know we're out of time. We're past time, actually. Maybe we'll get to these questions next week. For those who are watching online, we appreciate your attendance. We are going to pause now for